So good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful day. It's beautiful here. I'm here at the Brantford office and the sun's shining and it looks like a fabulous day. I know there's rain heading in later, but we're going to have a great day. So it's 10:01, so we want to go ahead and get started. Jody's handling letting everybody in. Feel free to unmute and chat if you have a question or want clarification on something. But we'll go ahead and get started. So let me share my screen. So crafting the perfect offer. So before we get too into this, I just wanted to go over a couple things. So I don't know of a company around that gives the support and resources that our company does. And this is a shout out to our transaction coordinators, Kelly, Ryan, PJ, all of our managers, Jody, everybody out there who's willing to help you. And but our transaction coordinators are just wonderful. And I think, Larissa, are you there? Or did she go away?
She's
So,
here.
No, I'm here. I'm taking
Okay.
attendance.
Oh, okay. Well, I want you to give a little commercial about everything you guys do as transaction coordinators to help when writing offers real quick.
Sure. Yeah. So we're here to assist. We can help you through the zip forms process and we can answer some limited questions for you on writing an offer. But really you want to spend time ahead of time going over things with your sales manager to really get a good idea on what you can do to craft the perfect offer and such. Tom is going to say repeatedly throughout this, give yourself time and give yourself a heads up. Get yourself prepared ahead of time so you're not stressed out doing things last minute. If you're scared about using zip forms, then take it out of the equation. Grab a paper packet, fill it out, write your offer. Even if you feel like it needs to be e-signed, send it to us and we'll send it out through e-signature, or we can even copy it over into zip forms if you want it nice and neat. But really focus on writing your offer and the actual offer process. And don't worry about the zip forms process so much if you're worried about the offer process. Get yourself feeling really good about that. And then let's take it to the next level with zip forms, maybe the next time. But we're here to kind of help any way you want. We're all licensed we're all licensed agents. And we've all bought and sold before, some much more extensively than others. I think, honestly, I'm the one who has actually been out in the field and sold the least out of everybody. Anyways, we're here and we're here to help.
So again, I don't know of a company that offers the support. So if you're not using our transaction coordinators, please start doing so because they are going to take the stress out of writing offers. So that's really, really important and something that nobody else provides. So let's get started. So what is a perfect offer? So is it a cash offer? Is it something with no contingencies? Is it something with a conventional mortgage, a government mortgage? Does anybody have an idea what the perfect offer is?
Every single one of those. And we're not going to get it if we don't have them.
Exactly. It actually is every single one of those because the perfect offer isn't up to what we think. The perfect offer is up to what the buyer wants to offer. And so our job is to help come up with that perfect offer. So our job is helping people make good decisions. Now, when we talk about making good decisions, the key word there is helping people make good decisions. Doesn't mean we make the decisions for them. We help them make the good decisions. So let's get into that. So the first thing you should be doing every time you meet with a buyer, and we've gone through this in some of the other classes, is a buyer consultation, because that sets the proper tone for the whole relationship, and it sets the tone for getting to the perfect offer. So you should have a buyer consultation. Um, but before we get into buyer consultation, one of the things you should be doing at the beginning of this whole thing is you need to talk about agency. And this is going to become more and more important now with the NAR lawsuit putting more and more emphasis on buyer agency and seller agency. But you need to make sure you really understand single agency, dual agency, designated agency, and even unrepresented clients. So single agency is really what we're going to talk about today. But you need to make sure you understand all these relationships that are permitted in Connecticut. So designated agency, just this note down here, we as a company do not use designated agency without express consent from Ryan and Kelly. And I'm sure PJ's on that list as well. So we just don't automatically do that. You need to really talk to somebody to get permission to do designated agency. We do a lot of single agency and obviously dual agency. And then unrepresented, we might start seeing more and more unrepresented clients where they are not represented by the listing agent as a dual agent, and they choose not to be represented. But today we're gonna focus on single agency, which would be buyer brokerage. So we're making some assumptions as we move forward here. One, you have a signed buyer brokerage agreement, which you all should be doing. Hopefully everybody's doing that before you go out and show any property. You're sitting down with your buyers, explaining buyer agency. You're talking about their fee, who's going to pay the fee, all those things. We're not talking about dual agency today, and we're going to be talking about residential property purchases. We're not talking about commercial property, industrial property, that kind of thing. The reason we're not talking about dual agency is because when you get into dual agency, there's some things you can and cannot do that you would do when just representing the buyer broker. So an example would be under dual agency, if we have the listing, obviously, and we're dual agents, we have the buyer brokerage agreement, you can't go do a CMA for the buyer and sit there and go, hey, I think our listing is overpriced. You know, I did my CMA and you should offer a lot less than the seller's asking. We can't do those type things under dual agency. So that's why today we're just going to assume we're doing buyer brokerage. We're not doing dual agency. So things you should be discussed at the buyer consultation. Hopefully you're doing all these things. And I think a lot of these things are also discussed during showings as you get to know your client better and before writing the offer. But again, buyer agency, dual agency, buyer brokerage fees, those things should already have been discussed before you're getting to writing the offer. If you're discussing those things right as you're writing the offer, that's a little late to the game. You should have had those forms signed and that little talk with the client before you went out and showed the property. But you should have hopefully reviewed the buying process and all the forms. If you haven't done that, this would be a great time to do that so that the buyer is totally informed on how this is going to go, what the process is, and they become familiar with the forms. So that's why I like to do that at the buyer consultation, so that when you get to writing an offer, they already understand what the forms look like and there's no surprises. You're going to have to talk about market conditions, and we'll come back to that. You need to know what the closing date is. What are these buyers looking for to close? Do they have a lease that's running out and they need to move in at a certain time? You know, they have a house that they're closing on and it's going to be closing on a certain date and they need to move by a certain day. So you need to talk about closing date. Hopefully, again, all these things are coming out as you continue your relationship with your buyer. You need to have the lender information. And we need to know, have they been pre-qualified or have they been pre-approved? The type of mortgage. Is it FHA, VA, conventional? Is CHFA involved? All those things we need to know. Their down payment. And it's kind of good to know where that down payment's coming from. Again, some people are afraid to ask that. They rely on the lender to ask those things, but it's important to know. Do we have to worry about getting a gift? when we were writing an offer. Where is this money coming from? Is it coming from retirement funds, you know, a 401k, something like that? So all those things. I had an instance where these people were buying a home and they said, oh, we can borrow money from our 401k. It might have been a different fund back then. It might have just been a retirement fund with their company. And they thought it was no problem borrowing and getting that money out for the down payment. Even though we talked about it, they said they had been assured that they could do that. Well, as we got into the process, we found out they couldn't. They weren't allowed to do that. So those are the reasons sometimes you discuss those things up front. You need to talk about closing costs, earnest money, contingencies. Are they going to want inspections? Do they have a house to sell? Disclosures. You know, all these things you need to be talking about before you get to writing the offer. Due diligence. You know, do they need to check something out with town hall to make sure they can do what they want with the property? For example, let's say they want to have horses on the property. Well, how many horses do they have? Have they talked to the town to see how many horses they can they have? You know, do we have the proper zoning? Are there any deed restrictions? Those kind of things. So do we need to be checking out stuff ahead of time and not having to put it in an offer? So all these things are things that you need to think about ahead of time. You need to talk to them about the negotiation process and the different tactics in negotiation so they can start mulling this over in their mind, how they want to handle things. And then you need to find out, are they working with an attorney? And as Larissa will point out, are they working with a real estate attorney, not just their attorney who they know, who's a neighbor and does injury type law? You know, does he know anything about real estate? So all these things, we need to be talking to them from day one all the way through the transaction. So what type of market are we in? Are we in a seller's market, buyer's market, or a balanced market? This is one of the biggest things buyers are going to rely on you for, is your knowledge of the local real estate market. You know, they want to know what the pricing trends are. And currently in Connecticut, we're in a seller's market. In the panhandle of Florida, they're pretty much into a buyer's market. So, you know, there can be huge contrasts around the country. So if you have somebody who's moving from one area of the country into our area, you have to make sure you educate them and find out what the differences are, because they may not understand the differences in the markets. And going through all that list of stuff I did a second ago, remember, if they're moving from another area, they could do business totally different. And when I was in Ohio, it wasn't uncommon for an earnest money deposit on a contract, when you wrote a contract, to be $1. And around here, of course, we get a lot more than that. In some places down in Fairfield County, in some areas, we get 1% to almost as much as 10% of the purchase price as an earnest money deposit. So, you know, things can vary a lot around the country. So these are things that you're probably going to be doing for your buyer. Again, you're going to do a CMA. If you're a dual agent, that's something we need to talk about. That's not something we can do. But the buyers want to have some kind of idea what they think they should be offering for the home. So it's important to do a comparative market analysis. Now, I know in this seller's market, it's really tough to come up with a price. You know, you could throw 3 or 4 prices up against the wall and Lord knows which one will stick. But you should still show them what you can find is happening in the market. And part of that is the market statistics. So you can show them that homes are selling for more than list price right now. You know, they're selling for 103% of list price, or whatever the stats are for your town. It doesn't hurt to show those to the buyer so they have confidence in the advice you're going to give them. And then one of the other things that's always important is understanding the seller's motivation and what the seller values. So how would you do that? Well, you pick up the phone and you call the listing agent to see what you can find out. You know, how motivated the seller is, are there certain things that are more important to the seller than others, that they want a quick closing, they want a delayed closing, they're really just interested in price? What other terms are there that are important to them? And then when I say the next thing, preference for contract or binder, first, as the buyer's agent, you should call the buyer's attorney and find out if he has a preference on which forms you use for his client and your client. But then it doesn't hurt to call the listing agent and find out if their attorney, the seller's attorney, has a preference. I had a transaction recently where we called the listing agent and said, which do they prefer? Do you want us to do a contract? If you do, which contract do they prefer? Do you want to do a binder? And they said that this was down in Fairfield County, and that their attorney was old school and he would want to do a binder because he likes to write his own contracts. So we thought that would give our buyer a leg up by going ahead and putting, in a form of a binder versus a contract. So that's something I think you should always check out. And then you need to have an understanding of how the offers will be presented. So again, you need to talk to the listing agent to find out, are they not going to make a decision on offers until a certain date? We're in this market where, Sunday at 5, we're going to be collecting offers, and then we're going to be presenting them all. Are they going to, if they get an offer that they like, are they going to wait to see if they get other offers, or are they going to go ahead and accept something? So you need to have that conversation. So all these things are part of crafting the perfect offer. And then you need to talk to your buyer and make sure that they understand in this market, well, and actually in all markets, the seller kind of gets to do what they want to do with offers. They could tell you that they want to wait and have all the offers come in by a certain date, and then they get an offer that they think so great and they go ahead and accept it. And they don't wait till Sunday at 5 to make a decision. They got this offer that's 100,000 over list price, and it's cash, and there's no contingencies, and they don't want to lose it. So they want to go ahead and accept it. So you need to make sure your buyers understand the sellers can basically do what they want. The seller doesn't even have to tell us there's multiple offers. You should have those conversations so the buyer understands what could happen in this market, in this crazy market. So then one of the other big discussions you have to have with your buyer is this home the one? What's going to happen if you don't get this home? Are you going to be that disappointed? So when crafting your offer, and you say you want to offer $410,000, and you find out you lost the house for somebody at $411,000, are you going to be upset? So at what point are you willing to walk away and say, hey, we'll go find another home? Or is this the home? Is this the one? And we need to do everything we need to do to get the house. So you need to have that honest discussion with your buyers.